Pokemon that gym leaders used can be a bit of a mixed bag. Most will generally have an ace Pokemon, which they'll save for last, while the first few generally act as fodder. For every blue from Gold, Silver, Crystal, there is a forgettable Marlon. In Gold, Silver, Crystal, the game's gym leaders have some pretty memorable Pokemon. Scyther was a shock first time round, Whitney's Milk Tank, Morty's Gengar, Jasmine's Steelix are all great, and they are all respective gym leaders' ace Pokemon. But the scrubs they send out first, not so memorable. And in this run, we're going to be using them to hopefully beat the game all the way to red. The plan goes like this, is that every time we beat a gym leader, we recruit their first or weakest Pokemon, that's usually one and the same, into our team. So let's say we beat Morty over in Equity. We'd face him with just a Pidgey, a Metapod and a Clefairy. And then once we beat Morty, we bring Gastly on board. Further restrictions are that we can't evolve the Pokemon we recruit, and we can only use the moves that they use when battling us. Of course, we can't use any items in battle. We also stop recruiting Pokemon after defeating Claire in Blackthorn. This means the weak Johto Pokemon have to carry us all the way through to the end of the game, so let's do it. Rather than start the game with Pidgey, we can kick things off with Totodile. There's no particular reason other than it's the path of least resistance. By simply mainlining Totodile from the get-go, fighting random battles and trainers as they cross our path, we're at level 12 by the time we reach Faulkner. I have purposely left out Climbing Sprout Tower because we're gonna need the extra XP when little Pidgey comes on board. For Faulkner, because we have Rage with Totodile, the battle simply consists of spamming that move to build up Totodile's attack with a reserve Berry just in case, until both Pidgey and Pidgeotto are defeated. With our first gym badge collected, we are forced to say bye-bye to Totodile because Pidgey's coming on board. Let's briefly take a look at what we'll be working with here. Pidgey has a base stat total of 251. For some perspective, Pokemon like Bidoof, Hoppip, Spinarak have a base stat total of 250. In Pidgey's case, it's the first stage in a 3-stage evolution, so it's forgivable. Casually, most of us don't suffer using Pidgey for too long because it'll eventually level up to Pidgeotto at 18. If we were to rely on Pidgey for something, it'd be its comparatively high, and I use that word lightly, speed stat of 56. Aside from that, it's pretty weak. Pidgey's moveset isn't exactly winning any awards either. Tackle, which isn't even 100% accurate, is a normal move. Mudslap, while useful, isn't great. At best, we may scrape by the early game with Pidgey, but its usefulness will not last long. I simply insert the Pidgey into the Pokemon box with whatever random stats it gets and also teach it Tackle and Mudslap. However, despite Pidgey's shortcomings, it is actually a good matchup against the upcoming gym leader, Bugsy. On the way to Azalea Town, we need Pidgey to gain as many levels as we can. If we had Gust, we could coast by on that move alone. But by the time we've reached Azalea Town and dealt with the Rockets in Slowpoke well, Pidgey's now at level 20. It's pretty clear that we should tackle Bugsy first rather than the rival because of our resistance with Bug. Plus, we're going to need every morsel of attack for the rival Bailey. And while I didn't put too much thought into the rival Pokemon, in the end his Meganium will be the toughest choice. Though to be honest, the rival in Gold, Silver, Crystal isn't even much to write home about. Anyway, back to Bugsy and his glorious Metapod that will soon become our next teammate. It's not going to be a problem and we can stick to Tackle, even getting a crit after the miss to easily knock it out. Kakuna is even less of an issue as long as it does poison. Kakuna probably would have been a better choice because at least Poison Sting actually has some utility. I did employ some big brain strats with a Poison Cure Berry because of course Poison ends up proccing. Either way, we take it out, leaving us with just the Scyther. While Fury Cutter's a move that we resist, our Tackle isn't too effective against it. I tried using Mudslap and forgot that it's totally pointless. Scyther eventually switches to Quick Attack instead of Fury Cutter that gets a much better bang for its buck. It even manages to score a crit right at the death, leaving Pidgey on just 10 HP before we lay on that final tackle. Time to recruit our next glorious party member. It was technically a toss-up between Metapod and Kakuna. Stat-wise, they're pretty similar, but in the theme of using each gym leader's weakest Pokemon, Metapod makes the most sense because, well, it's a Metapod. It even has a lower base stat total than Pidgey at 205. its HP and defense exist. Its moves suck. Tackle, which it doesn't even have the stats to exploit. Harden, if Metapod could survive a few hits, then maybe it could stall in some scenarios. String Shot is probably its most useful move because lowering speed might actually be viable, but in most situations Metapod is not long for this world, but it's the best we've got for Whitney. I've got no illusions that the battle against Miltank is going to be all Pidgey all the time, but I do share some of the experience with Metapod along the way. I have the faintest idea of a strategy in mind, and it involves Metapod being able to take at least one hit, but I don't want to give all the XP in the surrounding area to Pidgey to just beat Whitney. We've got a Clefairy to think about. However, before we can even thinking about recruiting Clefairy into our team, we have to deal with a cow in the room. I do the usual thing of fighting trainers along Route 34 as well as the underground tunnel in Goldenrod. Specifically, I don't head up Route 35 just yet. By the time we've also beaten the trainers in Whitney's gym, Pidgey is level 25 and Metapod is level 17. And remember, we only have the moves they come equipped with, despite having learned some new moves as we've leveled up. Against Clefairy, there is no real strategy aside from using Metapod to inflict something close to damage. However, after going for Harden first, Clefairy obviously outspeeds and takes out a chunk of Metapod's HP. After mimicking Harden, Clefairy then gets Metronome Thunderbolt. Good job it wasn't against Pidgey, I guess. Pidgey goes for Mud Slap and then gets slapped itself, taking it just above half HP. By now, even getting past the Clefairy feels like an impossibility. While we do make it past the Clefairy and to Miltank, we're on 27 HP. Against Rollout or Stomp, we are not gonna last long. The first rollout leaves us with 11 HP. I go for Mud Slap strat, but there's no point because the next rollout is a KO. Yeah, so I give it another go at our current levels, and even though we make it past Clefairy with Pidgey and in better shape, and we do get off several Mud Slaps to lower Miltank's accuracy, it is just still not working. But we have learned a couple of things. The most obvious is that currently we are not outspeeding Miltank. We may have a plan for that though. The other is that the Mud Slap strategy is going to be our most powerful tool in chiseling out a victory. Pidgey still do weak though. The only solution to that is to just go around and battle some more trainers along Route 35 and beyond. It's not so bad because once we reach Ecruteak, a number of pathways open up anyway. But one thing that you just need to consider is that once we recruit a new Pokemon, it's typically at a lower level. Fighting trainers is the most efficient way to gain XP, so we need to keep a reserve of trainers so we can efficiently level up our new recruit. By the end of our battling tour, Metapod is now level 18 and Pidgey is level 26. We've not gained massive levels and we're not seeing that great returns from it because of both Pokemon's pathetic base stats. The next battle against Whitney sees some improvement. Metapod does a little better at holding its own against Clefairy. It's still lacking that survivability, and rather than Harden, I just try to eke out whatever tackle damage we can so that Pidgey can come in for that revenge KO. But then Clefairy gets some clutch Mimic luck with Blizzard and destroys Metapod. But those extra levels do end up reaping some good rewards for Pidgey. Tackle's doing much better damage now, and we can take Clefairy down with just 2 hits, leaving us on 63 HP for Miltank. Currently, Miltank is still faster than us. I'd rather it go for Rollout than Stomp, but we don't get the luck. The plan is to keep spamming Mud Slap for several rounds to lower Miltank's accuracy so we can then follow up with Tackle and pray for some good luck. Unfortunately, in this battle, we ain't getting it. Eventually, I decide to just switch things up. One thing people tend to forget in Gen 2 is that Miltank actually has Attract. People just associate it with Rollout. It's only in the remakes that people tend to think of Miltank as the Attract Pokemon. I mean,
just look at those udders.
The plan now is to start with Pidgey and use it to defeat Miltank. Then we switch to Metapod so that it can survive just 1 hit against the Miltank to then use String Shot. By lowering Miltank's speed by just 1 stage allows Pidgey to move first against it. It's a small advantage but pretty vital when accuracy is involved. We start to see the hints of this strategy working. Miltank even gets sent into Red Bar on a couple of occasions, but I feel if Pidgey were just a few levels higher, it would just give us that advantage. There's nothing to do but just roam the grass and battle wild Pokemon until we've taken Pidgey to level 30, and at this point I refuse to go any higher because we came just so close to defeating Whitney before. So after a couple of more tries, things go in our favour for Clefairy. we're going to start with Pidgey. At this level, all we need are just 2 tackles and we're able to KO it. As long as it doesn't get insane luck with Metronome, we can make it through Whitney's first Pokemon relatively unscathed. When we have the option to change Pokemon, this is where we swap into Metapod. All Metapod is there to do is just use 1 String Shot and lower Miltank's speed by 1 stage. But Miltank of course outspeeds and uses Attract. Metapod's philosophy of bros before hoes kicks in and it manages to crank out a String Shot. While Metapod ain't surviving this battle, it does get off a single tackle before being stomped into oblivion. Now we've got Pidgey coming out. Because we outspeed, Pidgey's going straight for the Mud Slaps. While it's not an exact science, through trial and error, using 3 Mud Slaps just should be enough. We've got to balance lowering Miltank's accuracy with the potential of receiving damage and make sure we're in a decent enough position to then start dealing damage. And it doesn't exactly start off well. Despite our Mud Slaps, Miltank successfully uses Rollout twice. Pidgey manages to tank it surprisingly well and survives on 20 HP, but we have barely done any real damage to Miltank and still have a big cow-shaped hill to climb. After that 3rd Mud Slap, we switch to Tackle. We get a hit in, but then get hit with Stomp, bringing us to just 1 HP. Miltank is surely going to heal if we let it, but somehow we crank out 1 more tackle to take it out, and our reward for defeating Whitney is a Clefairy. Yay. Clefairy is pretty middling. While Clefable would have been really useful, its 2nd stage evolution technically has the highest base stat total in the party, so far at 323. It has the potential, and I use that in the light sense, to become a special attack tank with 65 special defense. Its special attack, while not awful, isn't going to be helping us out too much because of the moveset we're stuck with. Double Slap is not really going to be helping us out too much. Encore may have some strategic uses, the same with Mimic, but the issue with those 2 moves is that they'll only prove useful inside battles where more strategy is required and Clefairy could actually survive. Its last move, Metronome, can come in clutch, but it's a gamble in the truest sense. What all this means is that it's not going to be displacing the mighty Pidgey as our main Pokemon anytime soon. But Clefairy could become a bit of an ace in our upcoming battle with Morty given its resistance to ghost moves. Gambling on Metronome might be our best bet considering our only other attacking option would be Pidgey's Mud Slap, which has a base power of just 20. I think we're going to be leaning on out leveling our problems. It's at this point I decided to abandon all ideas of Metapod being a viable option. Behind the scenes, I've been working on a graph depicting how useful each gym leader's Pokemon has been throughout the entire game. Let me just say that Metapod started at 20 and plummeted to 0 after the battle with Whitney. After making the decision to split the EXP gains over Pidgey and Clefairy for the upcoming battle with Morty, we check out the Burn Tower rival. Nothing to talk about here. Pidgey is still carrying the run on its little feathered back. After the battle, however, I decided not to head to Olivine City just yet. My mind's on the XP again. With 2 normal Pokemon, Morty may not be as difficult as it is in a solo run. When we reach Morty, Clefairy's at level 21 and Pidgey's at level 32. I lead with the Clefairy because this is more of an exploratory battle anyway. Metronome is our most viable option. Of course, we gotta get Curse from Gastly, but then, out of all the moves it could choose, Clefairy Metronome's Belly Drum. Left at 17 HP, we've got no choice but to bring in Pidgey, and as soon as it comes out, Gastly uses Mean Look, no problem there. But at level 32, even the pathetic Mud Slap can deal enough damage to take Gastly out. For Morty's Haunter, I decide to bring back Clefairy because I'm wary of getting hypnotized. Haunter hits us with Curse, and I went for Mimic, hoping that Haunter would have used Hypnosis. No such luck, and we're left on just 2 HP. Pidgey ends up coming right back a turn later. This is when Haunter wants to use Hypnosis. It misses, and we retaliate with a Mud Slap that comes oh so close to knocking it out. In the very next turn, Haunter gets its Hypnosis and there is nothing we can do but just wait it out. Now that Haunter has no effective moves because it mimicked Mud Slap like a fool, it can only use Curse. Asleep and without many options, we switch back to Metapod. No surprises what happens next. Gengar puts Metapod to sleep and then combos into Dream Eater. Well, that means it's time for Clefairy to once again show itself. With it out in the field, we go for Metronome, and thankfully, Hypnosis doesn't hit. Clefairy manages to pull off a clutch Metronome Earthquake though. Despite the hint of being able to pull this back and my deliberation, we're not going to be here much longer because Clefairy, of course, gets put to sleep and we see that Dream Eater combo yet again. No choice but to just bring Pidgey back out, who is still snoozing. You can imagine how the rest of the battle plays out. Gengar feasts on Pidgey's dreams and the battle is soon over. While I do try the battle again a few times, it becomes quickly apparent that we are not making any headway in our current state. We still don't want to head to the left and waste some of that precious XP, so instead we decide to head to the Kimono Girls. They all have some decently leveled evolutions, which gives both Clefairy and Pidgey the opportunity to just gain a few more levels before we try Morty once again. I don't opt to fight all the Kimono Girls though, because I reckon we can come close to defeating Morty with the XP gains we've got. With Pidgey at level 32 and Clefairy at level 21, we just might have given ourselves the edge that we needed. So back at it again. So against the level 21 Gastly, which we'll soon have, we choose Metronome, which gives us Mega Horn. Obviously not too effective, but paired with Curse, it takes Gastly over the halfway mark. We don't want the Curse tick damage, so we quickly switch into Pidgey. Pidgey gets a mean look before going with Mud Slap, which of course is going to KO the Gastly. Morty's going to bring out Haunter next. We're best off bringing Clefairy back into the battle to act as a Curse Pinata, if nothing else. I was deliberating whether to try and mimic Hypnosis, but end up going for Metronome instead. Haunter, kinda predictably, goes for Curse, but then our Metronome serves up a Psybeam of all moves, one-shotting the Haunter. You go, Clefairy. Still, Clefairy's cursed and we're trying to conserve HP, so it's time for Metapod to serve its one and only purpose, Meat Shield. We hurl Metapod out there to hopefully take some Hypnosis and Dream Eater damage. The hope was to get off a string shot to lower Gengar's speed, but that just wasn't happening. A few turns later, it is out of the picture, but I've got another trick up my sleeve. We switch back into Clefairy. I know we're not going to outspeed, but we can lean on Gengar's predictability. Gengar goes for Hypnosis, which misses, and we've gone for Mimic. We mimic Hypnosis. All that needs to happen on the next turn is for Gengar to miss, but it goes for Mean Look. A problem? Yeah, but our Hypnosis hit and we've created just a little breathing room. From here we have no choice but to just hope for some decent Metronome luck. At first we get Wrap, useless. Then a turn later it's Rolling Kick, even more useless. Then things start looking up a little when Crabhammer comes out. But then Gengar wakes up. It goes for Hypnosis and misses. I got our Hypnosis timing right and we put it back to sleep. On the next turn, Clefairy Metronome Sandstorm, which could actually be pretty effective, but on the very next turn of Metronome, it comes up with Charm, which is useless in this battle. We get into a bit of a back and forth with Gengar just using Hypnosis when we have to, and getting some good luck on our end by avoiding all of Gengar's Hypnosises. But just a few turns later, Clefairy fulfills its godlike Super Saiyan arc of Metronomic Earthquake and KOing Gengar. After leveling up, I decide to keep Clefairy on the field to see if its streak of half-decent luck can continue. We've still got one Hypnosis left, so when Haunter comes out, we go straight for it and manage to put the Haunter to sleep. While it's snoozing, we've got a single Metronome remaining. After rolling the dice, we get Metal Claw. Not great, but at least it does some damage. Unfortunately, we have 0 attacking moves left, and because Haunter's used Mean Look, we've got no choice but to simply wait there until Haunter eventually KOs Clefairy by mimicking Double Slap. Finally, we are able to bring Pidgey out. The battle's all but wrapped up now because Haunter doesn't have an effective move against us. All we have to do from here is just keep hitting the Mud Slap and we eventually come out the other end with a new badge and a fresh recruit. In a lot of cases, Gastly is actually a decent Pokemon to have on your team. It's basically a quick special attacking glass cannon. However, Morty's version of Gastly pretty much sucks. We have no moves that can take advantage of that awesome 100 base special attack. The only thing working in our favour is Gastly's high speed of 80. In fact, Gastly's most useful move will be Curse. Lick will mostly do awful damage, but the paralysis chance could be strategically advantageous. Spite won't be too useful because the chances are that Gastly won't even survive that long in battle. Mean Look is pointless because trainers rarely change their Pokemon anyway. Our best bet is going to be in strategically using Gastly to whittle down tough Pokemon, and its high speed means that we don't have to focus on leveling it too much either. With our newest member now in the roster, we can finally head through Route 38 and 39 to Olivine City. Typically, aside from fighting the trainers along these routes, we'd probably also head up to the lighthouse and battle trainers there for the extra XP. In our case, we want to save those gains for later. Right now, we actually have a decent lineup against Chuck with Pokemon like Pidgey and Gastly. Not saying it's going to be easy, but it's definitely possible. For Chuck, we go straight in with Gastly because his Primeape doesn't have a move that is able to damage us. Gastly can then keep spamming Lick until we proc that paralysis. A turn or two later, I end up switching to Curse because licking Primeape to death would just take forever. Another benefit with Gastly is that if we keep its HP at a number that is indivisible by 2, it'll allow us free bites that Curse Cherry, which may come in handy. When Primeape eventually goes down, Gastly levels up to 26. We've got Poliwrath next. I wasn't 100% sure whether Gastly would be able to outspeed the Poliwrath, but it turns out that it does. We're going for a Curse, leaving us on 2 HP. I'm expecting Poliwrath to go for Surf, and I am not disappointed. All we basically have to do is survive long enough for Poliwrath to get knocked out by Curse, so I decide to bring out Pidgey. I'm not so sure about its bulk, but a few mud slaps here and there just can't hurt our cause. However, Poliwrath does have Mind Reader, which means that its next move won't miss. It also likes to combo this with Hypnosis and Dynamic Punch. It gets the former to proc, but I'm thinking it's going to be too late anyway. Dynamic Punch won't do a lot of damage. It especially doesn't do a lot of damage when it misses. When Pidgey wakes up, we use Mud Slap, which nearly KOs the Poliwrath. In the end, it doesn't matter because Curse mops up for us. And that's Chuck, his first try victory. We've also gained an extremely valuable teammate. I like Primeape, it's kind of cool. For this kind of run, it's the best Pokemon that we've gotten so far. With a base stat total of 455, it is way above any of the other scrubs in our party. It's got pretty good stats all round, with its speed and attack being the standouts. The downside is that only Karate Chop is actually useful. With a 50 base power and a high crit chance when combined with Stab, it should put in a bit of a shift this run. Leer, Rage and Fury Stripes really aren't going to be doing much for us because with the state of our team, we want to KO Pokemon as quickly as possible and we barely have any physical attacking moves. Of course, Primeape's going to be especially useful against the next gym leader, Jasmine. And this is the reason I skip climbing up that lighthouse. Primeape needs a good few levels before we're going to be able to be leaning on it too heavily in battle against Jasmine. I don't want to think about Steelix's high defense just yet. That's where those Karate Chop crits should come in handy. I'm just hoping we can get into a position where a single base Karate Chop can KO her Magnemite so we don't get paralyzed. We're going through the lighthouse, healing Ampharos, and then heading to Jasmine's gym. Primeape's now level 27. In the first go round, I choose to lead with our level 27 Clefairy in the hopes of getting off a few decent metronomes to just whittle down her team. But we don't end up getting very far. We're making Thunderbolt probably wasn't the best move because Magnemite can easily do over half damage to Clefairy. In fact, we don't manage to get off a single move with Clefairy before it's KO'd. Instead of bringing out Primeape, I go for Pidgey instead. I honestly don't know how much Mud Slap will do, and in hindsight, I should have been saving Pidgey for Steelix. Either way, we unleash it on the Magnemite. While Mud Slap takes Magnemite past the halfway mark, its Thunderbolt easily one-shot Pidgey. Not great. It's time to bring out Primeape. As you might expect, Karate Chop can absolutely destroy the Magnemite. But then Jasmine brings out Steelix. We're up against a lot of bulk and decent attack, so I don't think we're long for this world. Though we outspeed Steelix, most Pokemon do, Karate Chop doesn't crit and does about 1/4 of Steelix's health, but just one Iron Tail is able to one-shot Primeape. Not great. It's clear that the battle is basically a failure right now, but there are a ton of improvements we can make to win this thing without having to level up. The first mistake we made was sending out Clefairy first. We should have been just going straight with Primeape. After a couple of more attempts, that's exactly what we do. A crit from Karate Chop will easily one-shot the first Magnemite. If Primeape's on the field, Jasmine will typically switch into Steelix next. This is where Gastly actually has some utility. We know we're going to outspeed that Steelix. Gastly is basically a curse machine. We pop off the move. Steelix then misses Iron Tail. We switch to Lick to maybe proc the paralysis. While that doesn't happen, Gastly has served its purpose. So when it's defeated, we swap into Clefairy. We just want to waste turns. However, that doesn't quite work out. Clefairy ain't the bulkiest Pokemon. It also doesn't help when Clefairy metronomes Sandstorm of all moves. Steelix then hits with Iron Tail, and that is the fairy down. Unlike in later gens, Curse tick damage won't proc if the opponent Pokemon is defeated. I contemplated whether to bring out Primeape or Pidgey, and ultimately went with the latter because any gains we can make from using Mud Slap just won't be wasted. Pidgey gets a beak full of sand when it hits the field. We do outspeed with Mud Slap, but Steelix's Iron Tail hits. Pidgey then clings to life on just 6 HP. Thankfully, the curse damage ticks before Sandstorm does, allowing us to get some precious damage against Steelix. We only have Primeape remaining. I am worried that Jasmine will go for that Hyper Potion. However, when Primeape's sent out, Steelix just isn't quite in that healing range, so the combination of a good hit from Karate Chop plus the curse damage is enough to knock Steelix out. Jasmine just has her final Magnemite left. I'm not sure if we can KO it with just Karate Chop without the crit. Chances are it could use Thunder Wave or Thunderbolt and end our run. We take some chip damage from Sandstorm and then find out that a normal Karate Chop can easily one-shot Magnemite and hand us the battle. We've now got another new friend. It cannot be understated how valuable Magnemite was for this run. This little magnet is goated. Source is everywhere. Because Steel was introduced in this gen, it is definitely OP. It's still extremely defensive in later gens, but especially so in Gen 2. While Magnemite only has a base stat total of 325, it has got the stats where it matters. Its special attack and its defense. The majority of moves will encounter, we resist anyway. Move wise, it is the best we've gotten so far. Sonic Boom really isn't too great, but it has its uses. Its moves like the awesome Thunderbolt, Thunder Wave and Supersonic will absolutely be carrying us through this run. Honestly, Magnemite's back must have been in shambles at the end of this thing. With Chuck and Jasmine defeated, we are forced to go to the Lake of Rage and then to the Rocket Hideout. It does allow us a good enough opportunity to grab some levels for our newest recruit, but it's around this point that it's become clear which Pokemon are absolutely going to be carrying the rest of this run. Right now, that is Primeape and Magnemite. Pidgey just hasn't got the moves or stats to keep up, and it's the same with Clefairy. Gastly doesn't require too much focus because it fulfills such a singular role. For Pryce, we are of course going to be kicking off the battle with Magnemite. At level 32, even though it's not too speedy, it is able to go first against Seel. Thunderbolt rips through Seel and it's a one-shot. Magnemite levels up to 33 and Pryce is about to send out Piloswine next. We can now send out Primeape to deal with it. Even though Karate Chop doesn't crit, it takes Piloswine's health past that halfway mark. Piloswine hits us with an Icy Wind, no big deal. We should knock it out next turn because Piloswine looks to be just out of healing range. When we use the next Karate Chop, it hits, we get a crit, not that it mattered, and out goes Piloswine. Instead of switching back into Magnemite, I decide to get Primeape just a little more XP against Pryce's final Pokemon, the Dugong. We are faster than Dugong. We've got Karate Chop. The battle's just already been decided. Just a couple of Karate Chops is all we need to hand us the victory and a new party member. That sucked, by the way. I had such high hopes for Seel. It's got Aurora Beam, which while not as useful as Ice Beam, is the best scratch that, the only ice move that we have. In my naivety, I imagined this thing maining against both Claire and Lance's Dragon Pokemon. But when we actually take a look at its stats, an altogether different picture is painted. Seel's built around bulk more than attack. With that 45 special attack, we're never going to be outputting much damage. Its special defense is its best stat, but that's not saying much. Honestly, I don't think we're going to get much mileage out of Seel. Our move like Rest isn't going to be too useful because Seel's going to be too weak to be able to survive multiple hits when we're up against tougher Pokemon. If we have the choice between Aurora Beam and Icy Wind, we're always going to go with Aurora Beam. Headbutt could be strategic with its chance to flinch. If we're talking about this Pokemon's efficacy in the challenge to come, it's way behind the likes of Magnemite and Pidgey. This thing is Clefairy tier. It's everyone's favourite part with the second stage of the Team Rocket story. We clear the radio tower and all the related areas in Goldenrod before we can actually progress with the story in Blackthorn. By now we're running with a level 30 Seel, a level 35 Primeape, a level 29 Gastly, a level 39 Magnemite and a level 35 Pidgey. It's round about now that we really actually start putting Seel to the test and we can just see how much it sucks within like the first couple of battles. While it's slightly viable against a Dratini, the moment it comes up against Dragonair or any other Pokemon that's in the second stage of evolution or above, it just doesn't have the HP or defenses or attack to really just be viable. It was as I was making my way through Claire's gym that this was starting to become apparent. With this in mind, we don't have too many options. Magnemite can and will be useful against Kingdra through moves like Thunder Wave and Thunderbolt doing neutral damage, but our outlook against the Dragonair looks pretty bleak. The first go round with Claire and we've got a level 31 Seel facing off against a level 37 Dragonair. Like all dragon Pokemon that have access to it, Thunder Wave is the first move it uses, and of course it outspeeds. Aurora Beam is only able to do about a quarter. May the Pokegods lend us their strength, because as we battle along, Paralysis somehow not proccing, Dragonair pops off a few moves. We're here chipping away its health with Aurora Beam, and surprisingly we end up defeating it. So far, Seel has managed to exceed my Limbo Bar low expectations. Seel levels up to 32, and after deciding not to learn Takedown, not like we could use it anyway, I decided to switch into another mon. I'm not really sure who we should send out, but after a moment or two of thinking, Pidgey's up. Not sure what I was expecting Pidgey to do here. Even if I had an idea, Pidgey immediately gets frazzled by Thunderbolt. That was the moment I truly recognised why we wouldn't be using it anymore. After another think about who should come out next, I settle on Primeape. Though we don't have anything super effective, Karate Chop does tend to crit a bit, and Primeape has decent attack. When we swap it in, I'm instantly rewarded for that genius strategy with a Karate Chop crit that does well over half of Dragonair's HP. Dragonair then, of course, goes for Thunder Wave and misses, and I'm thinking we've got Claire's second Pokemon all wrapped up. Another Karate Chop a turn later, and it is down. We keep Primeape out in the field because it's been doing pretty well so far. We do outspeed the final Dragonair, and while we don't get the crit, Dragonair's Thunder Wave misses. I was really hoping for the crit on the second Karate Chop though, but we don't get it. Instead of Thunder Wave, Dragonair goes for Ice Beam, and because Primeape's special defense isn't terrible, it does tank it pretty well. There's no Hyper Potion just yet, so we go with another Karate Chop, and this time we see that crit. Primeape's been doing so well, we haven't even had to rely on Magnemite just yet. We level up to 36. Primeape wants to learn Seismic Toss, but of course we can't. When it comes time to switch things up, I was in two minds. I want to get off Curse against Kingdra, but it'll outspeed Gastly at its current level. But if I bring out Magnemite, it probably won't outspeed, so we could pop off a Thunder Wave. Not only that, Kingdra's Surf would probably knock it out, so Gastly it is. Predictably, Kingdra totally washes it away. Thanks for your service. The only real play we have is to bring out Magnemite and just hope it survives, because Primeape ain't winning the speed battle. Magnemite comes out, we line up Thunder Wave, and there it is, Surf. But Magnemite, being the total bro that it is, tanks it and survives at just 14 HP. We then manage to proc the Thunder Wave. We definitely outspeed now, but instead of going the smarter route of just inflicting some damage, I get greedy and go for Supersonic. Its trash accuracy is our undoing. Kingdra doesn't get paralyzed and uses Surf. We've got two Pokemon left, well, one because Seel is pretty much useless. So we send out Primeape at 66 HP. Primeape outspeeds with Karate Chop, but there's no crit and it ain't doing that much damage. Thankfully Kingdra's paralyzed, so we get off free this time. Another Karate Chop later and we get that crit, and it does a ton of damage to Kingdra. But if it attacks and it's fully paralyzed, surely Claire is going to use that Hyper Potion now. And yep, there it is. We'll definitely get two hits in, but both would have to be crits. The first Karate Chop does a crit, but our second one does. If it's paralyzed again, we could have this. Kingdra's fully paralyzed. We use Karate Chop. It leaves Kingdra on the tiniest bit of HP. Kingdra uses Surf, and Primeape's down, devastated. We've only got Seel left. A paralyzed Seel with hardly any health. Can it do it? We send it out. You go, Seel. We hope. Hyper Beam. That was close. Not bad for a first try. Now we try this a few more times to get a better handle on the battle. Instead of sending out Seel first, we opt for Pidgey. The plan is to use Mud Slap to lower Dragonair's accuracy. This one doesn't have Thunderbolt, it's got Surf. Pidgey surviving this battle is not mandatory, it'd just be nice. Lowering Dragonair's accuracy is actually working though, it keeps messing with Surf. Pidgey starts laying on the tackle and it's actually making a bit of headway. Can it actually pull this off? Well, as Dragonair is just one tackle away from defeat, it gets off a Surf and takes us down. Good effort though. We have Primeape come in for the revenge KO on Dragonair because I can't be dealing with Seel's slowness. It's only on the next Dragonair that we decide to bring Seel out. The hope is that we can whittle down this Dragonair's HP and then have Primeape come in for the revenge KO. But this Dragonair has Thunderbolt. Despite it going for Thunder Wave right off the bat and Seel then getting paralyzed, Seel can actually tank at least one Thunderbolt and pop off an Aurora Beam before it's eventually knocked out. Like before, we bring in Primeape for some revenge after toying with the idea of sending out Magnemite. Primeape has to get a crit though. We do outspeed, we use Karate Chop, and we get that crit. Unlike the previous two Dragonair, we don't really have a Pokemon that we can sacrifice to whittle down its health. It's for this reason that I decided to stick with Primeape. Maybe a crit can one-shot Dragonair and maybe not, but when Dragonair comes out and we go for Karate Chop, we don't get the crit and it's not even doing half, which ain't great. Dragonair's Thunder Waves are missing though, and they keep missing. In total, we get 3 misses in a row, letting us defeat Claire's third Pokemon without taking a scratch. The thinking around Kingdra hasn't really changed. We still want to bring in Magnemite first and get that Thunder Wave off. I was expecting the Surf from Kingdra, but it goes for Smokescreen. Great, because our Thunder Wave procs. Again, I get greedy with wanting to proc Confusion with Supersonic though. While we do miss the first attempt and pay for it with a Surf, Magnemite can survive it, and we do then proc Confusion. Rather than change out, I keep Magnemite on the field because why not? Kingdra hits itself in Confusion, we use Thunderbolt, and ooh baby, that is a lot of damage. Magnemite could solo this, and when Kingdra then hits itself in Confusion, it does. Wow, didn't even need the rest of the Pokemon. As I said before, Magnemite just keeps getting better and better. Dragonair is the final addition to our team, specifically Claire's first Dragonair, Sir Dragonair. I had high hopes for Dragonair, don't get me wrong. It's got decent base stats, 420 Blaze, evenly spread. The problem is the boost is in physical attack and this Dragonair only has special moves. Again, technically, this Dragonair is our second best Pokemon. Surf was sorely needed and will be extremely useful in some Elite Four battles and beyond. Slam is fine, I guess. Body Slam would have been better, of course. Thunder Wave is always useful, and having another Pokemon that can proc the status is always handy. Dragon Breath's also what we need for Lance, and in a pinch, it can provide some good neutral attacking special damage. Overall, Dragonair feels B tier for this one. Very good, but not great. But at least it is no Metapod. The biggest issue we're going to have from this point is the sheer level discrepancy and the generally weak nature of our Pokemon. We're going to be rolling into the Elite Four with Magnemite, Dragonair, Primeape, Gastly, Seel, and Pidgey. If we look broadly at how we think this will play out, Magnemite is going to be the most useful Pokemon against Will's team, with the exception of Executor and Jinx. Against Koga, Magnemite's at the top of the list again because of its immunity to poison. Dragonair and Primeape could also fill in some gaps if needed. For Broly, we're going to come a little unstuck. Primeape and Dragonair could do well against Onix, but his fighting Pokemon? I'm not quite sure how we're going to handle that one. Magnemite isn't great for this battle because of its weakness to fighting moves. Karen though, we've got Primeape, which will be good against Umbreon. Dragonair can work against Houndoom, Murkrow, Vileplume, Gengar, not sure yet, and Lance, I don't even want to think about it just yet. Well, we're not going to find out where we'll suffer unless we just give it a go. I roll into the first battle with Will. Our Magnemite is at level 41 and we do have a clear advantage. However, Magnemite's not outspeeding Will's first Xatu anytime soon. Even though it resists Psychic, it still does a fair bit of damage. We respond with a crit, and I'm guessing a normal hit wouldn't have been a one-shot. Will's next Pokemon, the Executor, is going to be a pain. Though we technically have an effective move in Aurora Beam, Seel still sucks and is well underleveled. We bring it out anyway and it goes pretty much how you'd expect. We don't outspeed the Executor and get hit with Psychic. The crit was just overkill. Dragonair's our next best Pokemon, purely from a resistance standpoint. Aside from using Thunder Wave and then taking a Psychic, we've not got much on the attacking front. When we eventually get up a Dragon Breath, it's not doing much more than tickling Executor. So Pidgey, you're up next to get KO'd. Thanks to the paralysis, Pidgey can outspeed and go with Mud Slap. Beyond that, it's not lasting longer than one turn. I'm conscious of keeping Magnemite alive as long as I can, so opt to bring out Primeape instead. I know it's not going to last long. Even when Karate Chop gets a crit, it is barely doing anything to Executor. Though it ends up missing a few turns, Primeape is not going to be seeing the end of this battle. No choice but for Magnemite to carry us to the finish line. When it hits the field, I go for Supersonic first, which ends up proccing. Executor then hits itself in Confusion. Will doesn't use a potion, so we can use Sonic Boom. It took like all 5 Pokemon to take down one Executor. Can we do the same for Will's team? When Xatu number 2 is sent out, we don't outspeed, but Psychic barely does anything to us. We also discover that Thunderbolt is a one-shot without the crit. Magnemite is just full of surprises. With Jinx ready to come out, I keep Magnemite around just to see what will happen, despite thinking for a moment. And what will happen is that Jinx outspeeds us and goes for Psychic, and we're done. Though we only have Gastly left, there's no point continuing because we're obviously far too underleveled to make any valuable progress. There's no real trick here. The best place to level up currently for the Pokemon we have is in Victory Road. We simply have to just roam around for a while, super tedious, until we've managed to pump those numbers up. The next time around, we've still kept Magnemite at level 41 because that is enough to deal with both Xatu. We get a bit fortunate with the first Xatu because Will goes for Confuse Ray and we don't end up hitting ourselves. With it down, we know Exeggutor's out next. I still don't have a good answer to Exeggutor's question, and even in the end, we never really do. But for now, I just deliberate for a while until finally deciding to bring out Pidgey, because if it somehow outspeeds, Mudslap might be useful. Turns out Pidgey can outspeed Exeggutor. We get off a Mudslap, but then are absolutely obliterated. Well, who's up next? The ideal and smarter scenario would have been to paralyze Exeggutor and then use Kurt, but I end up sending out Seel instead. With it, we can tank a Psychic, and Aurora Beam does good damage, but that is about as effective as Seel's gonna be. When it's KO'd, we do switch up into Dragonair and then go straight for that Thunder Wave. Psychic takes us well past half HP, so we won't survive another one, but Dragonair's done what it needed to do. Before getting knocked out, Dragon Breath surprisingly doesn't do awful damage. By now, with Exeggutor's help, it doesn't make much sense to sacrifice Gastly, so Magnemite comes out instead. I was hoping that Thunderbolt may just be able to take Exeggutor out, but it leaves it on just a slither of health. But the absolute bro ghost of Pidgey's Mudslap saves us and Exeggutor's Psychic misses. Xatu number 2's up next. Xatu, we stick with Magnemite. Like the Xatu before, it uses Confuse Ray, and once again, we don't hit ourselves in confusion. As we saw before, one Thunderbolt is enough to take it down, leaving just 2 Pokemon left. I'm now able to enact my original plan for Jinx, which is to use Primeape's Karate Chop. I wasn't sure whether Primeape would outspeed the Jinx, but it turns out that it does. Karate Chop doesn't crit though, and without it we can't one-shot Jinx. Psychic, however, can easily one-shot Primeape, but it's not so bad though, because Magnemite is available for the Revenge KO. Though we can't do anything about Jinx going first, we can beat Jinx in the end. Will's final Pokemon Slowbro, I am not worried about at all. We can stick with Magnemite. Slowbro, like its namesake, is pretty slow. Slower than Magnemite, and just one Thunderbolt will KO it. And that is Will dealt with. Koga may not be as much of a clear problem, but we're still hurting from that battle with Will. We really can't afford to be just burning through so many potions and Pokemon after a battle. Honestly, I think we'll have to go and level up some more, but it's worth seeing how we can get on with Koga at our current levels. We start with Dragonair for no real reason other than paralyzing the Pokemon is always a good strat. Ariados goes with Double Team, nothing new there, but after we use Dragon Breath on it, it uses Spiderweb. Now, I don't recall ever seeing Ariados use that move casually or in any of my other runs, maybe because it never lasts that long. Either way, that Double Team ends up being pretty trolly until Ariados then uses Baton Pass to switch into Venomoth. Psychic from Venomoth isn't too much of a problem, so we might as well go for another Thunder Wave. I then forget that Spiderweb is active and it prevents us from swapping out, even though I'm in the menu going crazy there for a moment, into another Pokemon before finally figuring that out. With Double Team still active, we're not scoring the hits with Dragon Breath that we need, and Venomoth is slowly whittling down our HP. Before long, Dragonair's knocked out, but it did give a decent run. Next, I go for Seel. I always think that Ice should be effective against Venomoth for some reason. Obviously, I came to that realization after going for Aurora Beam, which is pathetic. Seel's special defense does allow it to tank a few Psychics, and I'm just hoping that we can get a flinch with Headbutt because Venomoth's not got a ton of HP left. In the end, Seel can't quite make it over the finish line, but it doesn't matter though, because our absolute mad lad of a Pidgey can swoop in and still outspeed Venomoth, use Tackle, and then get the KO. For the Fortress, I am once again my own worst enemy, thinking that fighting would be effective against it because it's part Steel, but of course it's part Bug, so it's just neutral damage. The hope is that we get some crits and don't get hit by Explosion. Well, you get both of those things. Karate Chop does crit once, but when Fortress's health gets into that golden zone, it explodes and takes Primeape with it. No idea what's up next, but suspecting Muck, we switch back into Pidgey. I'm not expecting this to last long, but a few mud slaps can't hurt. Pidgey manages to get off a single mud slap before Muck retaliates with Sludge Bomb and wastes it. We've got 2 Pokemon left, and at this point, I bring in Gastly. We should still be faster than Muck, and using Curse will help us if we're having trouble hitting it. With Gastly's mission accomplished, now is the time for Magnemite. With its resistance to poison, we should be able to just coast by for the rest of this battle. Muck can't do anything to us, and in between being paralyzed, it goes down pretty quick. Koga's then forced to bring out his Ariados, which is already half dead. We have the advantage here, so we just go for Thunderbolt and get rid of it as quickly as possible. Koga's final Pokemon is Crobat. I am under no illusion that it's gonna outspeed us, but outside of Double Team, it's got nothing. It can hardly damage us, and Magnemite's Thunderbolt comes so close to knocking it out. Of course, Koga whips out that full restore to give it back all that health. However, the next time we use Thunderbolt, it turns out that it was just a range and we win. While technically a better battle than Will, we still lost a ton of Pokemon and are absolutely burning through our items. Scraping by Will and Koga was one thing, but getting past Bruno is a whole nother thing. We don't have anything close to a good matchup for the majority of Bruno's Pokemon, so we just start with Pidgey and hope for the best. While Hitmontop can't hit us with Dig, it still has Quick Attack and Pursuit, but they don't inflict so much damage that we can't tank a couple. The best we can do with Pidgey is get off a few mud slaps before it's defeated. I have a bit of a think for a moment before eventually settling on Dragonair for the fact that it will resist Hitmontop's moves and we can get a Thunder Wave off too. We simply get into a back and forth for a while until Hitmontop is defeated. One thing I do know is that this ain't going to be a viable strategy going forward. When given the opportunity to change, we probably should have gone with another Pokemon, because I forgot that Hitmonchan has Ice Punch. Surprisingly, Dragonair can tank a hit pretty well thanks to its good defenses, but aside from paralyzing Hitmonchan, there's not a whole lot we can do. Of course, Hitmonchan's next use of Ice Punch scores a crit, and we don't have to worry about Dragonair anymore. I then take far too long deciding who should come out next. It was probably best to just get the weaklings out of the way and chip away at some of Bruno's Pokemon while we can. This was obviously the wrong play at the time and cost us Seel and nearly Gastly, who we should have been saving for the Machamp. Now, a Pokemon like Primeape isn't exactly weak to fighting moves, and Karate Chop often crits, meaning it's actually a viable strat. It pays off, and instead of keeping Primeape around once we beat Hitmonchan, I swap into Gastly because of its immunity to fighting moves. Though Hitmonlee has Detect, it's forced to take a turn to use it, meaning we've got another guaranteed curse. We do get it off, but then are defeated the very next turn. We swap back into Primeape, but when we get hit with High Jump Kick, it's doing well over half. We shouldn't have gone with Fury Swipes and stuck with Karate Chop. In the end, it doesn't matter because we're knocked out and Bruno is effectively gating our progress. I'm determined to make it through the Elite Four without saving. It's totally possible. It's just a matter of putting some time into leveling up our Pokemon. In a casual run, you can get away with Pokemon at a lower level because they're often at later stages of evolution and have just much more firepower. Also, their move list tends to not suck. For us, this means roving around Victory Road for too long until we've gained a bunch of levels. When we've reached a good enough level, we can just keep going through Will and Koga to gain some more XP. The issue here, well, not so much issue, but the reality is that Magnemite is far outpacing all our other Pokemon in terms of usefulness. If 90% of the Pokemon we face are defeated by Magnemite alone, then we're hardly leveling up our other Pokemon. Basically, it ends up being that Magnemite starts vastly out-leveling our other Mons. It's not a solo run, but it is getting close. The very first time we successfully make it past Bruno took a while. We now start with Primeape for the time being. At level 45, its critless Karate Chops are doing just under half damage. We're hoping for those crits against Hitmontop, but we can tank its tactics well enough that by the time we've defeated it, Primeape's at 49 HP. We stick with Primeape for Hitmonlee. It's not likely we're going to survive an attack from it, but we can at least shave off some of its HP. At our current level, we outspeed Hitmonlee and pop up a crit Karate Chop. We get that much needed crit but are knocked out in the same turn. It's at this point that we switch into Dragonair. At level 44, Dragonair will outspeed and Dragon Breath is able to secure us another KO. We are 2 for 1 with Bruno now. There's no good counter for Hitmonchan. The best we can do is use Mud Slap with Pidgey until eventually it's knocked out. At level 38, it is capable of taking a beating, meaning we can lower Hitmonchan's accuracy enough so that when we bait the switch and bring in Seel, we immediately get frozen by Ice Punch. Our Mudslap strat has worked out just a little too well. It's not like Gen 1 where freeze is permanent, but not much better. There's around a 10% chance of unfreezing each turn, and we do not end up making those rolls. We just sit there watching Hitmonchan keep missing Thunder Punch until it finally hits us enough times for the KO. Bringing Dragonair back in, we should be just fine, and when Hitmonchan misses its Ice Punch, it's not long before we eventually put it down. There's no need to swap out with Dragonair because Onix is up next, the only one of Bruno's Pokemon that we have an actual advantage against. Literally all we need to do to defeat it is just use Surf once. And with that out of the way, Bruno's down to his last Pokemon, the Ace Machamp. We have to be pretty specific about how we handle this. Machamp needs to be cursed first of all. Through trial and error, our level 31 Gastly still outspeeds Machamp, and once it's out, we use Curse, and that's the first part dealt with. Of course, it's not like Gastly's going to survive getting hit with Rock Slide. The plan next was to use Pidgey and Mudslap. It's still breathing after all, but without the Thunder Wave paralysis, Pidgey is just not quick enough to get even one hit. Machamp, it doesn't matter though, because we can have Dragonair come in to replace Pidgey. The first order of business is getting the Thunder Wave on Machamp. It hits. Machamp uses Cross Chop and it does a load of damage. I wasn't expecting Dragonair to survive. Dragon Breath will be fine. Then we get the paralysis and the tick damage, exactly what we wanted. Problem is, Bruno is going to heal the Machamp next turn, and there's that max potion, but it's not too bad because we're going to get 2 Dragon Breaths and the damage ticks from Curse. By the time Machamp's managed to get off Cross Chop, it is well past half HP. Now it's a face-off between our and Bruno's final Pokemon. There's not much of a contest though, because even though we're slow, we are not slower than a paralyzed Machamp. One Thunderbolt finishes it off. We won, but at what cost? Well, about 5 revives and 6 Hyper Potions. Karen's up next. I'm not too worried about the battle. We have some decent enough matchups. For the first battle, we've got Primeape. Dark's weak to fighting, and I'm hoping we can get some good crit luck with the Karate Chop. Even without crit, Primeape's taking Umbreon past half HP. Even when we're hit with Sand Attack, Primeape's able to power through and finish off Umbreon. With Vileplume on the way, I deliberate on whether to send Seel out next, but Vileplume's got Petal Dance and Seel would not be outlasting that. We've got full reliable Pidgey though, because Vileplume likes to use statuses as well. We stick with Mudslap to hopefully lower its accuracy a fair bit. The plan from here is to then see how much tackle is doing. Hardly anything. So we then switch into Seel because Vileplume will be both paralyzed and confused. This should provide Seel with enough rope to just keep using Aurora Beam and defeat Vileplume. Surprisingly, in basically all the battles we've had so far, Seel is actually useful. We can keep chipping away at Vileplume's health while it's either missing, confused, or paralyzed. Karen decides to send out Gengar next. Maybe we should have used Pidgey because the Gengar would only have Curse or Destiny Bond. Instead, I chose Magnemite because I'm being overly cautious even though Gengar kinda sucks here. We do paralyze Gengar but then get Curse. After taking some chip damage, we swap into Pidgey. Problem here, Gengar soon goes for Destiny Bond and Mudslap isn't doing terrible damage. To save the little thing, we bring back Seel. In a 1000 IQ move, Gengar uses Lick, paralyzes Seel, and then uses Destiny Bond, so when we knock it out, we go down with it. Not that our pathetic Seel was outspeeding it anyway. Because we're both KO'd, I didn't know which Pokemon to expect next. To cover as many bases as possible, I go with Dragonair. It ends up being Murkrow, and there's not a lot to say about it. We probably didn't even need to go with Thunder Wave as our opening move, because Dragon Breath is doing over half damage. Murkrow gets off a Feint Attack, we knock it out. And that's that. But Houndoom is the real problem. None of our Pokemon will be able to outspeed it, and though Dragonair can tank a crunch, when we retaliate with Surf, it gets a crit. But in this instance,
I don't want that!
We don't want that. In this situation, Karen's just gonna fully heal Houndoom and put us in a worse position. Instead of sticking it out with Dragonair, I swap into Primeape instead. We waste no time in going for Karate Chop. It hits, it crits, and we win. So out of all the Elite Four members, Karen was the easiest. There's still one more trainer in our way. I didn't want to think about Lance before, now we've got no choice. This is, at best, a scouting mission to see what we're dealing with. Lance is always going to use Gyarados first. We have the answer to that in Magnemite's Thunderbolt. It easily tears through Gyarados' HP, so that's no problem at all. The Dragonites, however, yeah, not so confident. I go with Seel because we might as well see the potential output from an amazing move like Aurora Beam. Turns out, after somehow tanking an Outrage from a level 50 Dragonite, Aurora Beam ain't so great. Doesn't really matter though, we can let Seel perish, try another Pokemon. I can next go for Gastly in the hopes of getting some Curse Strats going. Even though Dragonite is confused, it doesn't hit itself in confusion and pulls off another Outrage. Guess we'll never know if it's a viable strategy. Okay then, well, let's try Pidgey next. Oh, that's right. I didn't use any elixirs or ethers, so Mudslap has no power points left. Alright then, let's try Tackle. Okay, guess we'll never know how that move works out either. It's bad, but I would have liked some confirmation at least. We can't keep losing Pokemon like this, so it's up to Magnemite to carry the rest of the team. It's not going to outspeed, but it should resist most of Dragonite's moves. Fortunately for us, this time, Dragonite does hit itself in confusion with its opening, and we get to use Thunder Wave. Now, let's see how much Thunderbolt does. It does way more damage than I was expecting. Magnemite is really carrying this thing. It's been going well so far, so we stick with Magnemite for Lance's level 47 Dragonite. We are keeping to the same game plan of Thunder Wave, Supersonic, Thunderbolt. We get outsped once again, but do proc the paralysis. Supersonic is always a gamble though. We get off the first time with Thunder Wave miss, but not the second time. Dragonite paralyzes us, but we get that Supersonic. Now we definitely do not outspeed it. Ugh, okay. So let's stick with Thunderbolt instead. Dragonite uses Hyper Beam. We take a good hit, but it's got recharged next turn. Our Thunderbolt does some really impressive damage, and we just need to hope that we can survive one more turn of wherever it throws at next. However, on the very next turn, we go first, so maybe it ended up being a speed attack. Who knows? Thunderbolt hits and defeats Lance's second Dragonite. Lance's third Dragonite is the Blizzard Dragonite, and right off the bat, it uses Blizzard, which barely even touches Magnemite. We've still yet to be paralyzed, so choose to paralyze the Dragonite. This is insurance in case we get knocked out, which is looking pretty likely. The next turn, Dragonite uses Hyper Beam, leaving Magnemite on just 3 HP, but because we've already taken away half of its HP, as long as we hit next turn, we can defeat it. Magnemite once again ends up coming in clutch, using Thunderbolt and knocking Dragonite out. Well done, little buddy. But this is really as far as we can be expected to go. Not only is Magnemite weak to Charizard, but Dragonair is the better matchup anyway. We bring it out, and while Charizard will easily get to go first, it's not got any super effective moves against Dragonair. Of course, we're going to be going straight for Surf, and Wing Attack is maybe doing about a third to us. So outside of a crit, we can finish this in 2 turns. After a Hyper Beam to the face from Charizard, the second Surf finishes the job. Lance has just one Pokemon left now, Aerodactyl. Problem is, our Pokemon are barely hanging on. I'm not sure if I'm even going to make it through this, so we might as well bring out Magnemite to give it a good send-off. It would have been great if one of Aerodactyl's moves missed, but when we get hit with Rock Slide, it's not too surprising. I decided on Primeape next though, because it can't do much against Aerodactyl. What's good is that we can at least tank a Wing Attack. Downside is that when we hit with Karate Chop, it's not a crit and does just below half of Aerodactyl's HP. When Dragonair comes out, we already know what's going to happen here. We're not quick enough to use Surf, Aerodactyl uses Ancient Power, and that is it. It is over. Instead of belaboring each Elite Four member, let's just show a successful run after I've done all the trial and error to make this possible. As you can see for Will, we've gained some levels over our repeated battling. At level 61, Magnemite is capable of outspeeding both Zato now. Thunderbolt is going to carry us through the majority of Will's Pokemon. It'll easily take care of the first Xatu, but we still have to swap into different Pokemon Dragonair for Executor. Dragonair hasn't gained anywhere near as many levels as Magnemite, but it doesn't have to. Things would be much more consistent if Executor was now a 2-shot, but Dragonair is bulky enough to withstand Executor's Psychics, so we're not in any real danger. It can just keep laying on Dragon Breath to eventually KO it. By having Dragonair land the killing blow, Will want to bring out Jinx next. This part is still inconsistent because Primeape can one-shot Jinx with a Karate Chop, but only if it's a crit. In this case, we don't get it and are on the receiving end of a Psychic. It's a dice roll here because Psychic won't always knock Primeape out. In this case it does, but that's not too much of an issue. If this happens, we just switch back into Magnemite. Though Jinx is fast, Magnemite is at a high enough level where it'll go first. We use Thunderbolt and it goes down. Should I have just kept Magnemite in for the jinx? Maybe, but I still want other Pokemon to gain EXP and Magnemite to conserve as many Thunderbolts as possible. For the rest of the battle, it's the Magnemite show. Thunderbolt is capable of one-shotting the bulky Slowpoke. All through this run, I have yet to see it attack. Anyway, Will's final Pokemon is Xatu 2. As I said, we outspeed it and we'll go for another Thunderbolt. No problem. Losing Primeape was kind of annoying because we have to waste a revive, but we're in a much better position than way back when. For Koga, we previously spread the love around with the Pokemon. However, upon doing these battles again and again, it's simply more economical to just keep Magnemite out for as long as possible. At its level 20 levels above most of Koga's Pokemon, it's got no problem destroying weaker Pokemon like the Ariados. While Koga's second Pokemon, Forretress, is bulky, it's lacking in that special defense, and at our level, with a move like Thunderbolt, there is no chance of it surviving. We are just slicing through Koga's Pokemon like a hot shuriken through butter. It's the same story with Venomoth. Even though we get crit against it, it doesn't matter because it is a one-shot either way. Muk is still Koga's bulkiest Pokemon, and I don't believe we are able to take it out with just one Thunderbolt in most circumstances, but aside from boosting its evasion, it's got nothing against us. We get a crit and it's down in 1. Even at level 62, we are still not fast enough to outspeed Koga's Crobat. It will always go for double team turn 1, but as long as we hit, the crits don't matter, we will easily destroy it. And that's Koga, probably the easiest of the Elite Four members for now. But next up, we have one of the most troublesome in Bruno. The strategies over time have simply narrowed into a fine point of use Magnemite, which has been working so far. Against Hitmontop, we're not messing around with Dragonair or Primeape, just Magnemite and Thunderbolt. Hitmontop doesn't even try for a quick attack and just accepts its fate. For Hitmonchan, it will always go for Mach Punch to get a super effective hit in, but it maybe does about 1/5 of our HP. Thunderbolt is then a one-shot. It's a toss-up between Hitmonlee and Machamp now. This time we get Machamp, which means that we have to switch into Gastly. Even though we are 15 levels below Machamp, Gastly still outspeeds, so we can use Curse. This may not be totally necessary, it's more of an insurance policy in case we happen to bring out Magnemite and Machamp gets that crit cross chop. But we've still got a good few Pokemon left when Gastly is inevitably KO'd, so we can switch into Dragonair. The plan now is to paralyze Machamp and take advantage of that. As you can see, cross chop, even without a crit, still does a ton of damage, and we won't be able to do enough damage to stop Bruno from healing Machamp. While we bring it close to defeat, Dragonair's KO'd, and with that health range, I'm expecting the potion. If we switch into Primeape, we see that potion and Machamp's at full health once again. We should be bulky enough to survive at least one cross chop, and then be in an even better position if the crit procs. While this doesn't happen, it doesn't matter in the end. With one Karate Chop and Curse, all we have to do is survive cross chop, which we do. Then we can finish it off. Bruno's final Pokemon is Onix. I think about swapping out, but kind of gambled with Primeape, feeling we should have gotten a crit by now. Keeping Primeape on the field doesn't quite work out though. Our Karate Chop doesn't crit, but it does do decent damage. Onix then hits us with Earthquake, knocking us out. I was deliberating between Pidgey and Seel, but Seel wins out in the end. It should be bulky enough to tank a hit, because we are definitely not outspeeding it. When that happens, Aurora Beam, though weak, is able to knock Onix out. That was probably the second most difficult battle out of the Elite Four and Champion so far. We're still losing quite a few Pokemon and burning through a bunch of revives and hyper potions, but I made sure to stock up on a ton just in case. For Karen, we'll lead with Primeape against Umbreon because we've seen it perform well even at lower levels. At level 48 without crit, we are not one-shotting Umbreon, but we are doing good damage. Umbreon of course goes for Sand Attack, which ends up hitting. And of course, we then miss with our next attack in addition to getting confused. Primeape digs down deep, avoids confusion, and then avoids missing to knock Umbreon out. I still don't have a good answer to Vileplume. I think about who to send out for a bit before deciding on Pidgey. We do resist the grass moves and lowering Vileplume's accuracy can't be a bad way to go. Pidgey again is a total bro, managing to get off 3 Mud Slaps, all the while avoiding both Vileplume's Stun Spore and its attempt to hit us with Petal Dance. Now I decide to switch it up and bring in Seel. Petal Dance will do a bunch of damage if it hits. Vileplume does hit itself in confusion first time, so we pop off an Aurora Beam, but our luck doesn't last that long because Vileplume gets us with the next Petal Dance and we're done. Next I go for Primeape because why not? Karate Chop outside of crits does trash damage, but we are so close to knocking Vileplume out. I switch to Fury Swipes after the Petal Dance missed, and it hits just enough to defeat it. Again, I'm deliberating on who to send out against the Gengar. I'm worried that Magnemite could get cursed and will need it, but I know it could probably knock it out. I go for Pidgey instead because it's really been putting in a shift so far, and Gengar can't really attack us. We managed to get off one Mud Slap before we're hit with Curse, and this is the time to change things up. Magnemite's up, and playing it like this typically baits out a Spike from Gengar, which is exactly what we get. Despite our much higher level, we are still not quick enough to get the first hit. Gengar uses Lick, we avoid the paralysis, and can then knock it out. Because Magnemite was on the field, Karen's going to switch into Houndoom. This is exactly what we want. Dragonair's at a higher level now, and it is just high enough so that Houndoom's Crunch will do slightly less than half damage, and our Surge will do just over half damage. Without Houndoom going into healing range, we are able to hold on just long enough for us to deal with it without any major problems. Finally, it's Murkrow. Nothing more to say about this one. We've just got to bring Magnemite out, have it use Thunderbolt, and that is the end of that. But there's still Lance waiting for us, and this battle still ain't safe or consistent. All I can do is make sure that all my Pokemon are at least revived and at full health. I've had to be really conservative with any PP restoring items to basically use them on Magnemite's Thunderbolt. Lance brings out Gyarados first. Absolutely no problem for Magnemite. Lance will then always pivot to his ace, the level 50 Dragonite. I end up stupidly thinking for a while here. I make the totally wrong play of going for Gastly. There is no way that it's going to be able to outspeed and use Curse, but I end up using it anyway. And hey, what do you know? That does absolutely nothing at all. Well, now Seel gets to sacrifice itself. The only saving grace here is that we're maybe gaining an advantage by Dragonite becoming confused at the end of this. While Seel can somehow tank an Outrage and Aurora Beam looks like it's doing good damage, Seel might actually have this. We get pretty close to knocking Dragonite out, but there's the full restore. We get one more hit on Dragonite at least before Dragonite uses Outrage again. In the theme of wasting Pokemon, here is Pidgey for all of 2 seconds before Dragonite absolutely destroys it. We're going through our Pokemon far too quickly for this to be sustainable. We are forced to pivot back to Magnemite. A fresh Outrage is waiting for us, but we thankfully resist it pretty well. The plan is to paralyze Dragonite, get it confused, and then just wail on it. The thing is, with how powerful Thunderbolt is, it becomes pretty clear we didn't even need to go through all that. In the end, Dragonite falls pretty easily, but that's only 2 Pokemon defeated. When the level 40 Dragonite's out, I still don't know if Thunderbolt can make the range, so I end up paralyzing it first. Dragonite got the same idea, and a turn later, we're both paralyzed. Not great, but Thunderbolt does plenty of damage though. Even with both of us paralyzed, we still outspeed it, and I can send it packing. Another Dragonite, another problem. There's no point trying to paralyze it, so let's just knock it out. We get a clutch Hyper Beam miss, and then don't get paralyzed when we pivot to Thunderbolt. We're not as lucky on the next turn because we take some damage, but we manage to avoid being paralyzed once again to beat the Dragonite. Magnemite is, I've said it before, absolutely carrying this run, but with Charizard up next, it's Dragonair's time to shine. 2 Surfs should wrap this up. Charizard is always going to go first, but that's fine, because we can tank a Hyper Beam, which basically means this ain't a problem. Surf does over Heart. Charizard has to recharge next turn, and we can breeze through at least one battle. Lance now only has one Pokemon left, Aerodactyl. There's no excuse why we shouldn't win this battle. Aerodactyl will outspeed, and it will use Ancient Power, and it does get the 10% stat boost. Crazy luck, but that's why I went for Thunder Wave with Dragonair. Even with the boosts, it's still paralyzed, so it ain't going to outspeed us the next turn when we use Surf. While we're not doing over half, it doesn't really need to. I don't think Dragonair needed to do anything else apart from get off that Thunder Wave, because once it's knocked out next turn, we've got the OG coming in. Magnemite comes out, and it's going to outspeed, and it's going to use Thunderbolt, and it is going to KO Aerodactyl, and we are the champion. But there's still more game to do. If the Kanto trainers were worth talking about, I'd talk about them, but they're not. Not even Blue is worth mentioning really. Red, however, is. We have got some kind of uphill battle on our hands here. Everyone knows Red's team is a beast. Pikachu level 80 plus, the rest of the team 70 plus. I do not want to be forced to level up these Pokemon past level 70 because that's what we may have to do considering their low level base stats and the variety of Red's team. During my first attempt, we've got the same team that we used for the Elite Four. Through battling around Kanto, we've gained some levels but not a ton. We've mainly been using Magnemite, Primeape and Dragonair. The rest just haven't been useful, so let's see what we're in for. We send out Primeape first. Pikachu has weak defense. We go for Karate Chop. Of course, we're outspread with Thunder, and it is a one-shot. Okie dokie then. Let's try Dragonair. Not great. We can paralyze Pikachu in this gen, but Dragon Breath ain't doing too much damage. Plus, Red has a bunch of full restores for Pikachu, and this ain't working either. Well, what about Magnemite? So Magnemite will ultimately be our best bet. In the first few battles, I thought it'd be just best to try and paralyze and confuse the Pikachu. It's fine if it uses Charm because we have no physical attacks. If it uses Thunder, that's not great. It'll do just under half damage, and it's going to take 2 Thunderbolts to KO it. It is possible to get through to Espeon though. The problem here is that Espeon, even against a Magnemite that resists Psychic, is still taking a ton of damage. We're lucky if Espeon goes for Reflect turn 1 because it gives us a little more rope to play with. But even if we do get past it, we've taken some serious hits from just 2 Pokemon, and Red has a bunch more left with moves that we are weak to. So let's say we get past Pikachu and Espeon. Red will bring out Venusaur next. Oftentimes Venusaur's a bit of a joke because its only attacking move is Solar Beam. Well, it has a Giga Drain as well, but without Sunny Day, which it does have, it normally takes 2 turns to hit. Venusaur is also pretty bulky too and resists a lot of the moves you could use. In the first few attempts, I just kept cycling through Pokemon to understand what's an actual viable route here. There is a fairly viable strat that I came upon, but it is not worth getting into that just yet. Let's focus on Pokemon we do kind of have an advantage against, Snorlax. This is the reason we've been hanging on to that Gastly. Snorlax has no moves that hit Gastly, so its only objective is to come out and use Curse, but Curse alone isn't going to win us the fight because Snorlax also has Rest, and it'll also rest after Curse has inflicted 2 turns of damage. We need to even the odds just a little bit. This typically comes in the form of Dragonair or Magnemite coming out and using a combo of Thunder Wave and Supersonic. Ideally, it's Magnemite because it can also tank Snorlax's attacks too. However, you've still got that chance of paralysis from Body Slam, and that is as far as we get for now. I could not beat more than 3 of Red's Pokemon. Venusaur would often end a run. Pikachu would often end a run because it'd just deal too much damage with Thunder on Magnemite for it to be viable the rest of the battle. We've got no chance but to level up and see if we can eventually make some progress. Well, it takes a fair bit of time, but I try it again after gaining some levels. I even decided to level up Clefairy because I still don't really know. It seemed like a strat at the time. With Magnemite at level 70, Dragonair at 55 and Primeape at level 53, I give it another go. Not too much has changed, but when we get past the Pikachu and Espeon and we get Venusaur, I tend to bring in Gastly so that we can use Curse. This helps us get into a position of consistently dealing damage to it, and because Gastly has an odd number of hit points, we could potentially use Curse up to 3 times in this battle. Nothing's changed for Snorlax either, though I do end up finishing it off with Primeape this time, which sees Red send out Charizard, and I know this thing has Wing Attack, so I swap into Dragonair. We won't outspeed, but we are gonna go for Thunder Wave to help things along. We get extremely lucky with Dragonair in this battle because not only does Wing Attack not quite do over half damage to us, Surf is doing about a third to Charizard. All we need is just 1 paralysis and we're good, which we get the very next turn. This bit of luck allows us to get past Charizard and to Red's final Pokemon, Blastoise. Look at it, we have technically not lost a single Pokemon. There should be no excuse for not winning this battle, right? Blastoise has decent moves, but if we can just proc a single Thunder Wave, we can do this. Ultimately, I keep Dragonair out. I don't think I'm outspeeding it. Blastoise has Blizzard, but it can miss. And that's what I'm hoping for. However, this time, Blizzard does not miss. Okay, now let's bring out Magnemite. Maybe it could survive a Surf and Paralyze, right? Nope, it cannot. And what are we supposed to do now? We've got nothing against this Blastoise. We needed that paralysis. We needed the Thunderbolt. The rest of the Pokemon we've got left are just floundering outside of some insane confluence of luck. And we get none of that. We can't win. We came close, but it's just not enough. We need more levels. So how and at what level is this achievable? Honestly, not that much more. If we solidify our strat a little more, I think it's possible. It does take a ton of attempts though. We return with Magnemite at level 72. If we get hit with Thunder twice by Pikachu, that is a reset. We just don't have enough health to last the rest of the battle, even with leftovers which we've had equipped for a while now. In this instance, we get extremely lucky. Not only does Pikachu miss with Charm, but our Thunderbolt paralyzes and hits it in that sweet spot where it inflicts enough damage to take Pikachu over half HP, but doesn't trigger red to heal it. This means we can make it past the Pikachu without taking a single hit. For Espeon, we're sticking with Magnemite. Turn 1, we get Reflect, which is exactly what we wanted to see. We then follow up with Thunder Wave. It's kind of up in the air if it's better to just hit it with Thunderbolt and risk Psychic or go with Thunder Wave. I found that if you go for the Start Smooth first, so will Espeon, but if you attack, Espeon will attack too, and it's better just to have that paralysis chance to avoid Psychic. But we end up getting perfect luck for Espeon. Its lower speed lets us go first, and the fact it is then paralyzed means we don't take a single hit again. With this, we are able to get past Espeon without taking a single hit. This, however, was always the easy part because Venusaur is up next, and we need to do some specific things in a very specific order. First, we bring out Dragonair and go straight for Thunder Wave. Now, after thinking for far too long, I go for Clefairy. I still don't know why. Maybe it was just to wear out Reflect, who knows. Either way, Venusaur set up Sunny Day, meaning it can now one-turn Solar Beam. Oh yeah, I remember now. Clefairy is our sacrifice Pokemon instead of letting Dragonair get KO'd. When Clefairy is inevitably destroyed, we can then switch into the Gastly. Can you see the problem with that though? Yeah, Gastly can get off a curse, but unless Venusaur is paralyzed, we gotta get hit. And how are we supposed to deal with Snorlax? A problem for later. We switch in Seel to go for the Headbutt Flinch strat, and wouldn't you know it, it actually starts to work. Seel may have been 90% trash during this run, but the very few occasions where we need it to come in clutch, it actually steps up to the plate and provides. Good boy. But without Gastly, we're not in a great position for Snorlax. The best we can do is bring out Magnemite and go for Thunder Wave Supersonic. Snorlax will always go for Amnesia turn 1, but that's not a problem because we're not going to be using Magnemite after it's completed its mission. Despite getting some absolute terrible luck with both proccing Paralyzes and Supersonic, after 4 attempts it finally hits. Now we switch into Primeape, and wouldn't you just know it, Snorlax immediately snaps out of confusion. Not only does that happen, it hits with Body Slam, does a ton of damage and paralyzes Primeape. Not great. To its credit, Primeape does manage to get in a couple of hits on Snorlax. In the end though, it's not enough because Body Slam hits and crushes it, and I know Snorlax is ready to use Rest. We have to send out a Pokemon that is capable of defeating Snorlax or we are back to square one. Time for Magnemite once again to dig us out of this hole, but when it uses Thunderbolt, it just doesn't do enough damage, but Snorlax is paralyzed, and we've done it. That is enough. One more Thunderbolt finishes it off. 2 Pokemon left, but we've seen how this goes. Charizard we can deal with, if just barely. We still don't outspeed, and this time we are stuck in Fire Spin. Shouldn't be too bad because we can at least use Thunder Wave. Okay, we get hit by the Wing Attack, not great, especially not great because now we definitely won't survive 2 of them with the tick damage of Fire Spin. Surf outside of a crit will be a 3-hit KO. Will Paralysis proc on Charizard? Nope, but it's okay because we've still got Magnemite and we'll still get just a little bit of health back from leftovers. We come out, Thunderbolt, there's the KO. Now we've got Blastoise. Do we have enough HP to survive Surf or Blizzard? I am guessing no. Blastoise is out. We don't outspeed. There's Surf, 2 HP. Thunder Wave rocks. Yes, we will outspeed, but will we do enough damage? What do we do? I don't know. Switch to Seel, I guess? Maybe Flinch strats can do enough? We give it a go. Seel's out. Surf does a lot. Headbutt does barely anything. No flinch. Next turn, we're done. We only have Magnemite left, a Magnemite on 2 HP. It is all up to you now, little buddy. We send it out, we line up a Thunderbolt, we go first, and it does not enough. But Blastoise is fully paralyzed. Go Magnemite, go Magnemite, go. One more Thunderbolt secures the victory. It is over, it is finally over. We used everything that we had available to us and more. That was a fun run. I think the restrictions on moves was what really makes you approach tough battles with much more strategy than if you just had access to each Pokemon's better level up moves. And in the spirit of graph loving, I charted each Pokemon's efficacy over time. Just to sum it up briefly, Pidgey saw great utility in the earliest game, right up to Jasmine, then took a nosedive. Metapod was consistently 100% trash all the way through, maybe outside of that battle with Whitney, but the odd Clefairy was not as trash because it did okay against Morty, but that's about it. Gastly had ups and downs because it was only effective in very specific instances, but when it was, it really came in clutch. Primeape was a really solid Pokemon, but couldn't quite reach the heights of Magnemite and Dragonair. Magnemite started off great and quickly became excellent. It ascended to godhood, MVP of the run. Seel was middling and then just crashed through the floor, and Dragonair was another extremely solid, if not great, Pokemon. But hey, maybe you could have made the run even easier. Feel free to let me know. If you have an idea for an interesting run in the same style, let me know. And if you want to like or subscribe, then go for it. Until next time, have a good one.